veering into international relations. There are three strange actors in the world, that is Russia, China, America. Everybody else is capable of getting along, and people will get along in a way that will move to renewables, that will do carbon border taxation, there will be simplicity, there will be clarity, and India should be part of that. So for all these reasons, we need to get to this world of full renewables. Only 3.2% of the Indian energy consumption today is coming from solar and wind and tiny amount of geothermal. This is just so disappointing. It is just so bad. We are Saudi Arabia of solar. In this, I also want to add Himalayan hydel. India has a phenomenal foreign policy achievement with Bhutan. There is a very stable arrangement where the Indian side goes and builds hydel plants, and electricity is evacuated from Bhutan and it is sent using transmission lines all over North India. And this is perfectly hedged, because in summer, when the glaciers are melting, you get more hydel energy, and in summer we need more air conditioning in North India. So it is a perfectly hedged arrangement. See, in India, it is entirely reasonable that on your mobile phone, it will show you continuously the price of electricity. A mobile phone is able to show us continuously the rupee-dollar exchange rate. Our mobile phone will show us the price of electricity. Okay, poor people in India have mobile phones. People will see the price of electricity, and my God, it will change their behavior.
हेलो सौरभ, कैसे हैं आप?
बस एकदम बढ़िया प्रणय। ख्याति, क्या हाल चाल है?
हालचाल तो ठीक है, लेकिन ये फ्यूल के प्राइसेस तो एकदम आसमान छू रहे हैं, और सिर्फ ये भारत में नहीं, पूरी दुनिया में हो रहा है, और खास करके पूरे एशिया में तो बहुत ही इसका असर है। और हमने इस पे एक एपिसोड भी किया था पिछले हफ्ते कि कैसे इस मिडिल ईस्ट में जो क्राइसिस चल रहा है उससे हमारी एनर्जी सिक्योरिटी कितनी इनसिक्योर है। ये बात ऑब्वियसली तो हमें पता थी, लेकिन वो और भी सामने आई है हमारे। तो क्यों ना इसी चर्चा को थोड़ी सी और आगे बढ़ाए आज के एपिसोड में।
बिल्कुल। और वैसे भारत में तो अभी पेट्रोल और डीजल की कीमतें बढ़ी नहीं है, क्योंकि लोग, सबको पता है कि इलेक्शन के बाद बढ़ने वाली है, लेकिन अभी तक नहीं बढ़ी है। शायद पता नहीं सिंगापुर में कैसे हालात है, लेकिन हाँ, ये विषय तो है ही। और हम लोगों ने बात की थी, लेकिन हम लोगों ने एक तार छेड़ा था कि इलेक्ट्रिसिटी रिफॉर्म इसका एक लॉन्ग टर्म सॉल्यूशन है, लेकिन उसको हम लोगों ने विस्तार से उसके ऊपर बात नहीं की थी। तो उसी के ऊपर आज चर्चा करते हैं, क्योंकि हमारे साथ जुड़ रहे हैं अजय शाह। अजय पहले भी आ चुके हैं पुलियाबाजी में, और उनके लिए इंट्रोडक्शन की ज़रूरत नहीं है, लेकिन अजय ने एक पेपर लिखा था अक्षय जेटली के साथ, जिसके ऊपर उन्होंने इलेक्ट्रिसिटी रिफॉर्म के बारे में बात की थी। तो अब वो, क्योंकि हम लोग इस ऑयल क्राइसिस में है, वो पेपर और प्रासंगिक हो चुका है, तो उसी के बारे में और समझने की कोशिश करते हैं। तो अजय, एक बार फिर स्वागत है पुलियाबाजी में आपका।
Thank you. It is always great to be here.
ग्रेट। तो अजय, शुरुआत हम लोग ऑयल से ही करना चाहते हैं। हम लोग अक्सर सुनते रहते थे ना पहले कि डेटा इज द न्यू ऑयल, और क्रिटिकल मिनरल्स इज द न्यू ऑयल, और लेकिन अब पता पड़ रहा है कि भाई ऑयल इज द न्यू ऑयल, क्योंकि ऑयल में ही इतनी प्रॉब्लम हो रही है। तो आप ये बताइए ना कि आप कैसे सोचते हैं, क्योंकि हम लोग को लगा था कि यार ऑयल इतना सब्स्टिट्यूटेबल चीज है, रशिया नहीं देगा तो और कोई दे देगा, ऐसे हम लोगों को लग रहा था। लेकिन अब ऐसे लग रहा है कि नहीं यार, इतनी डिपेंडेंस फिर भी है कुछ ही कंट्रीज पे, और हम लोग वो अवॉइड नहीं कर पा रहे। तो आप कैसे सोचते हैं ये ऑयल की चोक पॉइंट्स थियरी पर?
See, I'm really old, so I was there when there was the 1970s oil shock. Okay, so I was reading every day in the 1970s oil shock. So you see, I'm 100 years old. There is a very big change, which is that the share of the Middle East and the share of the Persian Gulf has gone down greatly. Okay, so the increase of the price of crude oil in the 70s led to exploration and extraction investments everywhere in the world. So Mexico and Russia emerged as big producers. And then came scientific and engineering innovation in America, which gave us horizontal drilling and fracking. And America turned from the world's biggest importer to one of the world's big exporters. So our dependence today on the Middle East is much less than it was in the bad old days. So in the 70s, if there was to be a choke point in the Persian Gulf, you would literally have to hold your breath because there was nowhere else to go. Now, it's only 20 million barrels a day coming out of the Middle East, and the Saudis have already built a 5 million barrels a day pipeline going to the Red Sea. So our dependence is lower. The second important fact is that the share of energy in world GDP has gone down. The share of energy in Indian GDP has gone down because as countries become richer, they need less and less primary energy. So think intuitively, when you're a poor country, at first, a person comes out from burning firewood to having LPG. Okay. Then a person becomes rich enough to do slow cooked mutton for 3 hours. Okay. Then after that, when you become richer, you're not consuming more energy. Okay. So people graduate to being able to use a personal transportation. You could use a car. People graduate to using LPG. People graduate to flying in planes. But after that, when you become richer, you don't consume more fuel. So the energy intensity of GDP today is way less than the 1970s. There was no computer revolution in the 70s. Okay, today a whole blast of world GDP is made around computers, and they don't use a whole lot of energy except for AI revolution. So
हाँ, मैं वहीं पे आने वाला था क्योंकि जेवॉन्स पैराडॉक्स तो है कि सब लोग और ज्यादा कंज्यूम भी कर रहे हैं तो
minor detail which we shall ignore for the moment. Right now my strategic picture is that we have built an enormously capable world economy. We've also built an enormously capable Indian economy. So energy dependence is much less than in the 70s. So the shocks from 73 to 79, the way the 70s was roiled by the energy shocks. This time it's not that bad. The world economy is better, and it's only the Persian Gulf, and that's only 20 million barrels a day, which is more survivable than things were in the 70s.
तो बेसिकली जो लोगों को लग रहा है कि इतना पहाड़ फट गया, आप कह रहे हैं पहले 70 में होता तो और ज्यादा फटता, लेकिन प्रोबेबली उस टाइम पे शायद मीडिया उतनी नहीं, और शायद आज लोग भी तो 70 से बहुत ज्यादा हैं और हमारी एक्सपेक्टेशंस बहुत ज्यादा हैं क्योंकि उस समय वैसी ही लाइफ इतनी मतलब मुश्किल थी, तो उसमें और मुश्किल आ गई। तो एक मेरे को लगता है वो भी एक पैमाना है ना कि व्हाट्स योर बेस लाइन, कि आप कितनी मुश्किल आपको मुश्किल लगती है। अभी हम ज्यादा प्रॉस्परस हैं तो थोड़ी सी भी उसमें हमारी लाइफ में हिचकिचाहट आएगी तो हमको लगता है कि अरे कितनी ज्यादा प्रॉब्लम आ गई है। पर जब आप थोड़े गरीब हैं तो फिर आप काफी सारी प्रॉब्लम्स जो है वो आप झेल सकते हैं कि ठीक है, ये तो हमारा वैसे ही 24 में से 20 घंटे बिजली नहीं आती थी तो अभी 21 घंटे नहीं आती, तो उसमें कौन सी बड़ी बात है।
A sense of perspective comes when we look at the bigger sweep of history. So in finance also, if 2008 was the first financial crisis in your life, it is very terrifying. But if you're an old person and you have seen many crises, then this too shall pass. That you get that sense of confidence and comfort.
तो क्या हमारी पिछले 2-3 दशकों में जो अलग अलग प्रकार के एनर्जी जैसे कि सोलर और दूसरी तरीके की एनर्जीज यूज होना शुरू हुआ है, क्या उसकी वो डाइवर्सिटी की वजह से क्या ये इस समय का एनर्जी शॉक कम है या उससे कोई कनेक्शन नहीं है? आपको क्या लगता है?
That's a great question, and there is no better answer to this nonsense of oil dependence than more solar dependence. Okay, so I always say, look, we are India, we are the Saudi Arabia of solar radiance. That we've got so much sunlight. If there is a solution, it is solar. And so when this crisis started, I once again started looking at the data, and it is important to measure these things correctly. So let me dwell on how to think about this. See, people talk a lot that we will have 500 gigawatts of solar capacity. Now, it's important to be careful about what that means. What that means is in the afternoon when the sun is shining, is generating 500 gigawatts. But the sun does not shine all of the day. Other than 6 hours a day, you don't have peak radiance. Also, you don't have the sun at the time of the monsoon. So the important measure is energy. So we should be counting energy in the physics unit of joules. So terajoules is the correct measure. That I don't care how you got the energy. First, show me how much is the grand total energy that you consume. And that is a certain number for the whole country. Interestingly, 20% of that comes from biomass. This is people burning wood and people burning cow dung. That is a full 20% of the Indian
अभी
energy
भी
consumption.
हम्म
20%. Okay, so
नहीं,
we're
इसीलिए
still a
प्रणय
very
काफी
poor
सारे लोग
country.
वापस जा रहे हैं ना गांव, और वो यही बोल रहे हैं कि भाई गैस नहीं मिल रही पर गांव में हम कुछ चला के खाना तो पका
So
लेंगे,
this
राइट?
is
सो
a
दैट्स
very poor
द
country.
बिग थिंग.
We should not run ahead of ourselves. And this is the most basic concept of economic development, that you have to get out of burning biomass to some modern energy source. And the best way to cook is induction heaters. They're super efficient. Using a gas is very inefficient. It's much better to use an induction electric heater. So we have 20% coming from biomass, and that is just a reflection of Indian poverty. Okay, step 2, I looked at imported oil and gas, because that's our current problem with the Persian Gulf. And it turns out that about 23% of our total energy is coming from the Persian Gulf. Okay, so 23% of the total energy consumed in India is coming either in the form of imported oil or imported gas. Sorry, I said Persian Gulf, that is wrong. It's imported oil or imported gas. You could be importing from Nigeria, we could be importing from Russia. But imported oil and imported gas accounts for 23% of the Indian energy mix. Then I turned to the category that is called modern renewables, which is solar and wind. And I was really disappointed that the number is just 3.2%. Only 3.2% of the Indian energy consumption today is coming from solar and wind and a tiny amount of geothermal and so on. This is just so disappointing. It is just so bad. Like, we are Saudi Arabia of solar. We have so much sunlight coming in our country. It is just such an opportunity. So in the Western countries, like, imagine you hear about solar panels in California. You hear about solar panels in Germany. They have very little sun compared to us. So if you've stood in the sun in Germany, you know that they don't get enough sunlight. Like Los Angeles, where I did my PhD, is at the same latitude as Himachal Pradesh. Okay, and it is essentially the bottom of the United States. All of the United States is above Los Angeles pretty much. And Los Angeles is at the level of Himachal Pradesh. So the bulk of India gets plenty of light. And it's just a shame. It's a tragedy. It's our failure that only 3.2% of the Indian energy consumption is modern renewables. And, we should really use this moment to rededicate ourselves to that battle. Like, what the hell? Why are we at 3.2? How do we get to 32? Eventually, we should really be getting to 100. That there is no reason to think in any other way. There is no place for coal in the modern world. There is no place for burning gas in the modern world. There is no place for using petrol and diesel in the modern world. We've got to get to 100% modern renewables. But at least right now, can we strategize that how to get from 3.2 to 32?
अजय, इसमें आगे बढ़ने से पहले मैं ये सवाल पूछना चाहता था कि 23% जो है, ये भी मुझे कम लग रहा था, क्योंकि कोल भी हम लोग इंपोर्ट करते हैं, तो मतलब अगर हम लोग हमारा इंपोर्ट डिपेंडेंस देखें तो वो शायद 23% से भी ज्यादा होगा, और मतलब बाकी चीजें भी हैं जिसमें
I only looked for imported oil, imported gas, because that's where the present international shock is, that we will have some quantity problems coming out of the Persian Gulf. So we'll buy from Nigeria and Russia. We'll have quantity problems on gas coming out of Qatar, which is harder to replace. But I was focused only on oil and gas. What you say is correct. We're also importing coal.
मुझे लगा हम कोल, प्रणय, ये कोकिंग, ये स्टील बनाने वाला और ये सब ज्यादा इंपोर्ट करते हैं ना शायद. जो पावर प्लांट्स में सिर्फ क्या कहते हैं वाला जो कोल है, वो तो हम अपना लोकल, जितना मुझे समझ में आता है, ज्यादातर यूज करते हैं, या वो भी हम इंपोर्ट
I
करते हैं
think
क्या?
there are thermal plants in Tamil Nadu who rely on
वो
imported coal. That
इंडोनेशिया से
the
जो करते हैं
logic
हम.
is that it's cheaper to bring coal in bulk ships over the sea than to transport in railways.
देन ओवर द
within India.
लैंड. हाँ, पॉसिबल. और
Also,
उसकी
Indian
एनर्जी
coal is very
एफिशिएंसी
low
भी ज्यादा है.
quality.
इंडियन कोल की एनर्जी एफिशिएंसी भी कम है. हाँ,
इसीलिए जो भी कोल पावर प्लांट्स जो पोर्ट्स के पास है, वो तो यही वाला बिजनेस कर रहे हैं, इंपोर्ट करो और एनर्जी बनाओ. तो अजय, इसमें जो 3% आपने मॉडर्न रिन्यूएबल्स बताया, उसमें आपने न्यूक्लियर को भी इंक्लूड किया है क्या?
Okay, so I love nuclear energy, but I'm a nuclear pessimist. Okay, so in an ideal world, my God, we would do more nuclear. Okay, I am a full believer in the importance and the role of nuclear. Uh, for the first time in history, I feel we have cracked the idea, which is small modular reactors. Okay, the essence is to put the damn reactor on an assembly line and mass produce them. Okay, so all of us know the World War II story of the boats that were carrying traffic from America to England, and German submarines started shooting down those ships. So the Americans built a factory to mass produce those ships on an assembly line. Okay, so at its peak, every 15 minutes, one ship would come out of the assembly line. So my dream is every 15 minutes, one small modular reactor should come out of an assembly line. And when that is done, the prices will just crash. And it's an absolutely great source of energy. I'm optimistic about safety issues. Okay, I am not uh, a great enthusiast for the Indian government-led nuclear program. Okay, because like many other public sector things, it is not able to get to high levels of reliability, scale, low cost, and safety. It's not the DNA of the Indian state. It's difficult for the Indian government to do it. Like if the Indian government tried to make planes, it was not going to work, right? So like that, if the Indian government tries to make reactors, it's not going to work. We should focus on imported reactors. The trouble is there are just so many difficulties in the world and we are not getting there. We're simply not overcoming the regulatory and other government barriers to get to mass production of reactors that will make the price points efficient. So I think it's still 10 years in the future to wait to see the price collapse of SMR. Currently, small modular reactor SMR remains an exotic technology. They are made by hand. Okay. So fine. Like it's a workshop and 10 people get together and they make a reactor and it costs billions of dollars. What is needed is it's got to become an assembly line, which is still far away. The thing is that with solar and wind, that long awaited future is here. We are already here. The prices of solar, the prices of wind, the prices of offshore wind, the prices of batteries, all these have collapsed already. We are here. Some of you would know I used to run a video show with Amit Verma, which was called Everything is Everything. In that, there is an episode on the future of electricity, and there is an episode on Moore's laws. Okay, and here I just want to get into Moore's laws. We use the title Moore's laws as in plural, because Moore's law is not the only idea for how technical gains happen. Moore's law is the idea that roughly every 18 months you get a doubling, or roughly n months you get a doubling of various kinds of technologies. The statistical best fit is called Wright's law, W-R-I-G-H-T, Wright's law, which says that humanity adds up a lifetime experience of the quantity manufactured, or a company adds up a lifetime experience of the quantity that has been done. And then every doubling of the lifetime quantity gives you a gain. And in the case of solar and wind and lithium, we're seeing that kind of phenomenon, that each doubling of the historical grand total manufacturing of the world of solar panels, of wind turbines, of lithium ion batteries is giving dramatic reductions in the price. And that story is not finished. It is going on every day. So the nuclear revolution is probably 10, 20 years out. Solar and wind and batteries is here today. So I am a full enthusiast about solar and wind and batteries. And that's the way to go now. The prices today are just great.
दोनों के दोनों, लेकिन थोड़े से लैंड इंटेंसिव ज्यादा है ना अजय, वो भी एक इशू है ना इंडिया में, क्योंकि लैंड हमारे लिए काफी प्रॉब्लमेटिक है। यूएस में लैंड तो बहुत ज्यादा इन लोगों के पास में, और मतलब थोक के भावी है, और हमारे यहाँ पे लैंड की ऐसा कमी नहीं है अगर स्टैटिस्टिकली देखें, लेकिन अवेलेबल लैंड एंड पॉलिसी जहां पे आप कुछ कर सकते हैं उसके साथ में, उसकी बड़ी दिक्कत है।
So first of all, there is a policy bottleneck that if you wanted to buy 1 square kilometer, which is roughly 100 megawatt solar plant in India, it's a pain. It's very difficult.
Yeah.
Now, every state has an incentive to try to solve these problems, and the better states will undertake the land market reform, which will overcome that problem. For the rest, think of Gujarat, that is Kutch, and Rajasthan as big deserts where 1,000 square kilometers can be put up, and then you have 100 gigawatts and so on. So there is literally no limit. On windmills, the very important frontier is offshore wind. The technical gains have happened. We have really high quality offshore wind technology. The best locations in India are off the coast of Tamil Nadu and also off the coast of Sri Lanka. And there is probably like 70 gigawatts of capacity that can be readily put up near the coast of Tamil Nadu. And
wow.
that's a very big
Okay.
number. And so the beauty of offshore is it doesn't intrude on domestic land, and you get the electricity. And then we'll need big transmission lines. So we'll need the transmission capability. Think of transmission lines as a superhighway, as the big bulk highway. And we will need transmission lines to move the electricity from Rajasthan or offshore Tamil Nadu to users all over the country. And as a thumb rule, modern HVDC transmission suffers a loss of about 5% energy for every 1,000 kilometers. Okay, so I wish it was
तो
lower,
इतना
but it's a
बट
reasonable
इतना बुरा
cost.
नहीं है हाँ
हम्म।
और इंडिया इतना बड़ा नहीं है उस मामले में राइट 2-3
Correct.
हजार किलोमीटर ये ऊपर से नीचे
Exactly. Itna bura nahi hai, and India is not that big. So, if for each 1,000 kilometers you get a 5% loss, that seems like a reasonable friction to pay for the country. In this, I also want to add Himalayan Hydel. Okay. So, India has a phenomenal foreign policy achievement with Bhutan, that there is a very stable arrangement where the Indian side goes and builds Hydel plants, and electricity is evacuated from Bhutan, and it is sent using transmission lines all over North India. And this is perfectly hedged because in summer, when the glaciers are melting, you get more hydel energy. And in summer, we need more air conditioning in North India. So it is a perfectly hedged arrangement. And the payments that go back from India to Bhutan are 60% of the Bhutanese GDP. Okay. So
Wow.
this is a great foreign policy achievement that India secured that kind of lifelong friendship with Bhutan, that we were able to do this. In my dreams, we will do similarly with Sri Lanka, because there's a whole lot of offshore wind capacity near Sri Lanka. And again, this should be the arrangement, that it is Indian capitalism that should put up these offshore wind turbines off the coast of Sri Lanka. And partly electricity should go back to Sri Lanka, but demand in Sri Lanka is small. And money should go back to Sri Lanka. Sri Lanka should get paid for the use of their high seas property. And for the rest, electricity should come back to India. And this requires foreign policy. That this is the way you have to think about foreign policy, not through the lens of nationalism, not through the lens of pride, but through the lens of deep, long-term connections where both sides are bound together so deeply that nobody wants to rock this boat. And there has to be a deep, amicable, friendly relations, not a day-to-day friction. And so, for example, Nepal, okay, we have to solve our long-term problem with Nepal because there is so much idle in Nepal waiting to be done for the North Indian market.
शानदार। हाँ, मैं ये सोच रहा था अजय, आपका जो एपिसोड था ना मूर्स लॉ वाला, मुझे उसमें ये एक विचार जोड़ना था कि मूर्स लॉ इटसेल्फ इज अ रिजल्ट ऑफ राइट्स लॉ, क्योंकि मूर्स लॉ में बहुत जो इम्प्रूवमेंट हुआ है काफी इसलिए हुआ है क्योंकि कंपनीज ने नया इकोनॉमिक चीज ढूंढा, फैबुलस फाउंड्री मॉडल ढूंढा, और फिर टीएसएमसी ने सीखा कि किस तरीके से और प्रोसेस इंप्रूव कर सकते हैं, और उनकी लर्निंग की वजह से मूर्स लॉ एक लॉ रह पाया है। तो वो भी एक तरीका, एक्चुअली मूर्स लॉ इज अ सबसेट ऑफ राइट्स लॉ, आप कह सकते हैं। तो
द इंटरेस्टिंग क्वेश्चन वी शुड आस्क इज अक्रॉस 50 or 80 different industries, if you fit statistical models, what fits better? And the broad answer is Wright's law fits better. It was very unique in the case of semiconductors, that the very semiconductor industry used Moore's law as a coordination and organization strategy. That everybody was thinking, okay, next 18 months, I have to double the number of chips. So I need new kinds of materials, I need new kind of software, I need new kind of fab, I need XUV. So semiconductors was unique, where Moore's law became a self-fulfilling prophecy. It became a coordination mechanism. When anybody gets excited about industrial policy, I say to them, you did not need a government to coordinate thousands of firms to create the semiconductor revolution. The firms quietly adopted a norm, a protocol, a social convention. Okay, we will get a doubling of every 18 months.
तो एक्चुअली कुछ दिन पहले मेरे को कोई मिला, इनफैक्ट वो कह रहा था कि इंटेल के सीनियर लीडरशिप ने आके बोला था, कह रहा था हम बाहर सबको लॉ लॉ बोलते हैं ताकि वो उनको लगे कि ये है, कहता है इट्स अ गोल, ये
हाँ
इट्स नॉट अ
बिल्कुल।
लॉ, बिकॉज कोई फिजिक्स का लॉ थोड़ी है। वो कहता है ये
हाँ
हमने ऐसे बोला कि ये हमारा गोल है और ये हमने गोल चला के रखा इतने साल तक।
Yeah,
बट ये
correct.
गजब की चीज है कि ये गोल किसी और ने नहीं दिया, इंडस्ट्री ने खुद को दिया। नो
Yeah.
गवर्नमेंट इंटरवेंशन, एज
There was no
अजय
industrial
सेड।
policy.
और
So never
बिल्कुल
ever
बिल्कुल।
advocate
हाँ,
industrial policy. Sometimes I think
yeah,
Pranay and I have some disagreements on this. So I will
हाँ
take this opportunity to torment you.
यस। हाँ हाँ पर वो तो है, इट इज जस्ट गोल भी नहीं था एक टाइम पे, तो सिर्फ प्रिडिक्शन था बेस्ड ऑन व्हाट हैज हैपेंड टिल 1965, और अब फिर गोल हो गया और फिर अब लॉ की तरह हो गया। ठीक है, अब आगे
65-70s में गोल बना
हाँ,
लिया उन्होंने।
हाँ,
हाँ,
हाँ।
करेक्ट।
तो आगे बढ़ते हैं। अजय, आपने जो एक बहुत ही निराशात्मक नंबर बोला, 3.2% ऑफ एनर्जी सप्लाई इज सोलर, लेकिन जो मीडिया रिपोर्ट आज है सोलर के ऊपर वो बहुत अलग है। इतने सारे सोलर प्रोजेक्ट्स बन रहे हैं, हम लोग यही सुनते रहते हैं, इतनी ज्यादा इंस्टॉल्ड कैपेसिटी है, लेकिन आप जैसे रेणुका और आपका पेपर भी है कि एक्चुअली जितने सोलर पावर बन रहा है उस वो इंस्टॉल्ड कैपेसिटी एक्चुअली प्रोजेक्ट्स कंप्लीट भी नहीं होते काफी। तो उसके बारे में थोड़ा बताइए ना, क्योंकि मुझे नहीं लगता लोगों को वो समझ में आता है।
Yeah. So Akshay, Renuka, and Upasa, I think, are the co-authors. They did a paper where they started at the CMIE CapEx database, where you see every single investment project in the country. Then, through the database, they tracked the projects and looked at the time to completion or the probability of completion. That does it even complete? And then, if it completes, how much time does it take? And they have this disappointing result that there are many big announcements, but actually things don't actually go through. CMIE has some classifications. They have a classification, they call it announced, that पहले कुछ newspaper story होती है, chief minister signs a contract, okay, that's an announcement. उसके बाद CMIE classifies a project as under implementation when there are some 10-12 checkpoints, but CMIE verifies, okay, if you have crossed some 10-12 checkpoints, then CMIE will say that you are a under implementation project. And uske baad, at some point, the actual operation starts and CMIE classifies it as completed. So based on that, Renuka, Akshay, Upasa did this paper where they look at what is the probability that something announced will actually complete and over how many years. And so they write models for both these things. And one of their results is that, yeah, you should not get so excited about announcements. Many announcements are made, they don't actually go through. So I think that by now every state has a mela. They want to attract
MOU मेला होता है।
yeah, they want to attract all the capitalists of the world into an AI summit, and they have to, the capitalists feel obliged to make some announcements. But I don't think that's a useful way to think about it. So I personally always focus on CMIE CapEx database under implementation. That announcements don't matter. Announcements is just hawa. That when CMIE classifies a project as under implementation, then I know, okay, fine, something serious is happening. You've got some land acquisition, some financial closure, some environmental clearance, a bunch of things. You've actually gone and done something. Whereas talk is cheap. If you want to please a chief minister, you'll just say some things.
नहीं, वही इस पेपर से मुझे याद है, द नंबर वाज समथिंग लाइक 95% अनाउंसमेंट्स actually doesn't get converted into final execution. 95%.
95, हाँ, वाह, 95%, बाप रे। ओके, माइंड बॉगलिंग नंबर। बाय द वे, हमको एक कॉन्टेक्स्ट सेट करना चाहिए। हमने पिछली बार बात की थी कि आई मीन काफी बार ना हमारे यहाँ पे सरकार भी करती है कि एनर्जी को एनर्जी की तरह नहीं देखते हैं ना हम। मतलब बोलते हैं कि भाई ऑयल अलग है, ये क्या कहते हैं अलग है, और फाइनली अभी भी हमको इसलिए इतनी दिक्कत आ रही है क्योंकि लोगों को ये लगता है कि ये क्या है, मेरे को सिलेंडर नहीं मिल रहा, लोग बोल रहे हैं तुम इंडक्शन लगा लो अपने घर में। ये तो आई थिंक एक मेंटल मेकअप भी हमको रीसेट करना चाहिए कि भाई एनर्जी है और एनर्जी फंजिबल होती है। मतलब एक एनर्जी दूसरी एनर्जी में फाइनली आपको एनर्जी यूज करनी है, तो हम कोई भी एनर्जी सोर्स को किसी भी और एनर्जी सोर्स से रिप्लेस कर सकते हैं। और स्पेसिफिकली हम इलेक्ट्रिसिटी की इसलिए बात कर रहे हैं बिकॉज इलेक्ट्रिसिटी इज अ वे जिसके पीछे आप कोई भी सोर्स इधर से उधर चेंज कर सकते हो। तो ये हमने एक पिछले पुलियाबाजी एपिसोड में भी डिस्कस किया था, लेकिन समहाउ बहुत पूरी दुनिया में ये ऑब्वियस है पर हिंदुस्तान में नहीं है। ये थोड़े सा मतलब एक गड़बड़ चीज है, पर ऐसा है तो हमें एक्नॉलेज करना चाहिए पहली बात। ये क्यों नहीं है ऐसा अजय, आपको क्यों लगता है?
The great miracle is electric mobility. That I just get so excited about electric cars and electric two-wheelers. Again, I'm so old that I have a childlike wonder about these things, because when I was young, you couldn't believe that these things could be done. Like the idea that there can be an electric car, was just beyond our wildest dreams. Lithium-ion batteries were exotic, expensive things. Like marmar ke, you could put a lithium-ion battery in a cell phone. But the idea of running an entire car on a lithium-ion battery is just like beyond your wildest dreams. Again, Wright's law, what it has done. So, Khyati, I think you're the youngest person in the room. Just think, when you
I'm
are
not
old,
actually.
you will have childlike wonder. Okay, Pranay, just think, when you get old, you will have childlike wonder, because you will actually know an age when AI inference tokens was seriously expensive.
हाँ, बिल्कुल, बिल्कुल, बिल्कुल। अभी
हम्म
तो फ़ोन पे चल रहा है अजय, ऑलरेडी हो गया। ये 2 महीने में ही पुराना हो गया।
हाँ.
नमस्ते। अगर आपको हमारी पुलियाबाजी पसंद आती है तो हमारी हिंदी प्रिंट मैगजीन को ज़रूर चेक कीजिए। पुलियाबाजी मैगजीन का दूसरा अंक आ चुका है। विषय है कानून का शासन और समीक्षा है हमारी अदालतें, कानून और गणतंत्र की। इस मैगजीन में आप पढ़ सकते हैं विशेषज्ञों द्वारा लिखे ओरिजिनल आर्टिकल्स हिंदी में। इसे आप हमारी वेबसाइट के मैगजीन सब्सक्रिप्शन टैब पर जाकर खरीद सकते हैं। अगर आपको हमारा काम पसंद आता है तो आप सबस्टैक पर अपना सपोर्ट हमें प्लेज कर सकते हैं। पुलियाबाजी के साथ जुड़े रहने के लिए आपका शुक्रिया।
अजय, जब हम ये नंबर देखते हैं 3.2% हमारा जो एनर्जी मिक्स का है वो सोलर से आ रहा है, राइट? लेकिन एट द सेम टाइम अगर हम देखते हैं तो पॉलिसी के एंगल से गवर्नमेंट बहुत सब्सिडी भी दे रही है। देखने से जैसा बहुत लगता है कि बहुत सारी चीजें हो रही है सोलर में, पर कहाँ पे है ये, अटका क्यों है? और हम आपने एक बहुत बड़ा इंपॉर्टेंट एलिमेंट बताया कि हमारा इलेक्ट्रिसिटी इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर का जो मॉडर्नाइजेशन होना चाहिए, या एक उसका जो डीप इलेक्ट्रिफिकेशन और होना चाहिए, राइट? तो ये क्यों अभी अटका है, किस तरीके से वो अटका है, वो थोड़ा सा अगर आप बता पाएं कि हम किस तरह से इसमें अभी भी पिछड़े हैं। हालांकि हम बहुत अच्छी तरह से, अभी काफी हमारा इलेक्ट्रिफिकेशन बढ़ चुका है पिछले 1 दशक में, पर किन किन पैमानों पे हम आज भी काफी पीछे हैं?
Okay, the heart of the problem is that solar and wind electricity is intermittent. Okay, like the wind may stop blowing. In the monsoon, you don't have sunlight. In the night, you don't have sunlight. Okay, now when we built out our electricity system, this was in the 50s and 60s. This was based on largely coal and hydel electricity, where these things run for 24 hours a day and there is no real difficulty on their production. So the present system is absolutely not ready for the intermittency of solar and wind power. Now, when solar and wind first came up, many policymakers thought that these are really, really good things, that we should have more solar in India. It does not emit carbon dioxide. We have plenty of sunlight in India. And so we should promote solar. So in a central planning way, the mood was that we should promote solar. It did not really, they did not think about the economics deeply. They just thought, like a central planner, like doing industrial policy, that solar is good. So we should promote solar. So a variety of initiatives were taken to try to incorporate solar into an old grid where, frankly, the electricity system was not designed to accommodate solar. And the electrical engineers, they were trying. So उन्होंने कहा हम भी तो थोड़ा try करें, and we'll try to put some solar into the grid. And they've done that to some extent. And all over India, essentially, they are maxed out. It is not possible to put more solar on the old grid anymore. Why? Because the peak of electricity consumption comes in the evening. Okay, so all of us, we go home and we open our fridge. Okay, so at that time, the cold air of the fridge comes out. And then when we close the fridge, now the fridge is warm, so the compressor kicks on. Okay, we go home and we put on an air conditioner. We go home and we run a washing machine. Okay, so all the appliances come on in the evening. And so we get an evening peak in the electricity consumption. And that's when the solar is not there. So at precisely the time when the Indian evening peak is coming, the solar generation is not there. And what is the electricity grid going to do? Where are you going to get electricity from? And upside down, in the daytime, the solar is producing. There is more solar than you can consume. Okay. Now, as an economist, I know the answer crystal clear, and all four of us on this call will instantly agree with the answer. The answer is prices. So the price has to change. Okay. So in the afternoon, when there is a ton of electricity, the price of electricity should go down. It should even go down to zero. Okay. And in the evening, when there is a shortage of electricity, the price of electricity should go up. Okay. So see, in India, it is entirely reasonable that on your mobile phone, it will show you continuously the price of electricity. A mobile phone is able to show us continuously the rupee dollar exchange rate. Our mobile phone will show us the price of electricity. Okay, poor people in India have mobile phones. सबके पास mobile phones है, ऐसे कोई तकलीफ नहीं है. And people will see the price of electricity, and my God, it will change their behavior. That will you cook your biryani in the afternoon on your induction heater, or will you cook your biryani in the evening when electricity is 10-20 rupees a unit? Of course, people will think. People will decide. Okay? So, for example, you will charge your car in the afternoon because electricity will be very cheap in the afternoon. You charge your car in the afternoon. But you know what? I know that aaj raat ko I'm not going to use my car. So I will actually rig up my battery and I will sell electricity in the evening. Because I know that tomorrow morning, when the sun comes out, I will be able to charge tomorrow. I have no big plan to use my car tonight. So actually, every EV, every scooter will become a seller of electricity. Okay. The key is prices. You have to let supply and demand make the price. And this is not the way our socialistic system works. In our socialistic system, the government wants to control the price. We have a little thing called an electricity regulator. They like to set the price. And this just doesn't work. It is a completely wrong way to think about this market. Okay, so this is problem one, that end users of energy need to see prices, and then they will change their behavior. They will change what they buy, how they buy. Will they use an efficient device? Will they use an inefficient device? And the most beautiful, will many people turn around and start selling electricity once you offer them enough of a price incentive? Then actually these things will get smoothed out. So, if I buy electricity in the afternoon and fill it in my car is my syntax tank. Okay. And in the evening, I'm selling from my car. Then I'm using my intelligence every day. There will be software to automate it. Okay. Tomorrow in the morning, I need this much electricity to drive to my office. So the remaining, 25% of my car is required to drive to my office. So 75% I can safely sell. I'll configure this in my software. And every evening at the peak, I'll be selling electricity from my software. So by the way, in the political economy of this reform, I feel one of the most powerful things we can show the people of India is that by doing this reform, you will get essentially free electricity for 4 hours a day, 6 hours a day. I feel that's a very powerful message to carry back to the people, saying, yeah, we're moving to a market-based system. In the evening, electricity will be expensive. Things will improve as the years go by. But in the afternoon, you will have plentiful, cheap electricity, either 0 or 0.5 or 1 or 1.5, whatever. There'll be very cheap electricity all over the country in the afternoon. That's the way to politically make this reform sellable. Okay, now think of a more industrial scale. Think of a business. I want to start a battery business. What will I do? I'm looking at the afternoon price and the evening price. If the afternoon price is sufficiently low and the evening price is sufficiently high, I will launch that business. It is my business. It is my business risk. I don't need a government. I'm not waiting for the government to put out a tender that we want a battery storage. It is my business decision that I think I will make money. I'm speculating that electricity will be cheap in the afternoon and expensive in the evening. And I calculate my IRR. I look at the price of lithium ion batteries and I choose to put such a factory. This is the way the price system works. Okay. And all this is missing in India today. The government puts out a tender that I want a solar facility here. There is a very bad thing the government is about to do right now. They are forcing every solar plant. They're about to pass a law where every solar plant will be forced to also buy a battery. Okay, now this is a fully ridiculous position. Like, there is one business called running a water utility where I will make water. There is another business called running water tanks where I will sell Syntex water tanks for my roof. Don't mix up these two. They're two separate problems. So production and storage are two separate problems. There is one business which is called making wheat. There is another business which is called holding inventory of wheat in a warehouse. We should not mix up the two. Imagine how it would be if we would force every wheat farmer, okay, I will compel you, I will use the coercive power of the government to force you to have one choti si warehouse to hold inventory of your own wheat. That's just wrong. Meaning it's a different business. So generating solar energy is a different business from the storage business. But in the mentality of the government, they want to force solar plants to look like coal plants because that is the way in which they currently operate. So this is my first layer explanation of where we are stuck. So we have a very bad concept in India, which is called net metering. In net metering, I put a rooftop solar, and when the sun is shining, I give my units to the SEB. And in the evening, when there is a shortage of electricity in the country, I get my units from the SEB, and the two are netted out. Now, this is completely wrong because energy in the afternoon is not the same as energy in the evening. And by netting them out, the SEB is actually putting themselves in a crunch because they have too much electricity in the afternoon. So, this is an industrial policy. We should promote solar. So let us give net metering as a benefit to households. Industrial policy will always go wrong. You have to let markets work. That prices should determine. Should I put solar on my roof? What if the afternoon price of electricity is near zero? Then I shouldn't bother, or maybe I should. But it's my business decision that if the price of electricity is low, maybe I should not put solar on my roof. Okay, and
या
then
फिर
we go
मैं
upstream.
मैं अपनी खुद की बैटरी लगा लूंगा, सोलर लगा के मैं बेचूंगा नहीं, क्योंकि मैं
That
शाम
too.
को यूज करना चाहता
Yeah, maybe I'll buy a battery and not solar. So I'll take grid power in the afternoon and I'll fill my battery and I will use it in the evening to run my air conditioner. Perfect. So we should not have a fixed answer. Okay. Or maybe I should go fully off grid. I'll put solar panels on my roof and I'll run my AC in the afternoon. And then I'm not participating in the grid. Okay. These are all business decisions that each person should make. And finally, you have to go upstream. The distribution company, the transmission company, all these, they actually need profound investments to become compatible with renewables. So there is a phrase of a renewables ready grid. Okay, so I want to give you two pieces of intuition into how this is different from the old system. Our present systems in India are all obsolete 40-year-old designs. Okay, they are not ready for the modern world. You have to shut down large parts of the Indian electricity system because it is not ready for today's economy, which should be a renewables-led economy. Now, what do you have in the world of renewables? You don't have a 1,000-megawatt single utility. Okay, so as a thumb rule, 1 square kilometer, which is a lot of land, is a 100-megawatt plant, okay, which is not a lot of electricity. So you should think of the solar world as a large number of choti generating plants or many wind installations, each of which generates a small amount of electricity. It's not one big super highway. It's not one big expressway from a 2000 megawatt coal plant coming out all over the country. Rather, it's many small roads need to be built. Further, the roads need to be two-way. That maybe in the evening, I'm taking electricity from the government, from the grid, and in the afternoon, I'm giving electricity to the grid. So it is not a one-way road. You need two lanes, not one lane. Today's grid is designed with one lane. Electricity only comes down. And it is organized around super highways for the big coal plants. Now, all this requires change. Who is going to do the change? We should not think in an industrial policy way. We should not think in a central planning way. The government officials have neither the ability, nor the money, nor the incentive, nor the management capability to overcome this problem. So we should stop waiting for the government to solve all this problem. And what we need is the price system. That there should be a price for a transmission corridor. And if that price is high, somebody else will come and put one more line. Okay, that will create competition. You need regulation for monopolies. So we need to think about where are the monopolies. But the regulator should be looking at the rate of return and not the price. So watch, I am Bombay. There is a monopoly electricity distribution company, the BSES, which is now called Reliance BSES. Okay, it's a monopoly, and that is a problem. There's a market failure. It's a monopoly. But the regulator should not set the price at which BSES sells me electricity. The regulator should interfere with the markup. because the price should fluctuate every 10 minutes. Okay, the price should be determined by supply and demand. So Reliance BSES should buy electricity from some overall India, where there's a solar plant in Rajasthan and a battery in the Sahyadris. Okay, so there can be a hydel based battery in the Sahyadris. All this is the wholesale sourcing problem of Reliance BSES. These are competitive markets. They don't need regulation. They are professionals who are buying and selling, and they have their self-interest. You don't need regulation. You only need regulation for monopolies. So there is a Reliance BSES monopoly in Bombay, and the regulator should worry about the markup, that there should not be a supernormal profit, but they should not get into the price. We are doing deeply harmful things in India because the regulator says the price shall be 7 rupees per unit. And there you've just destroyed the entire possibility of the Indian energy system working correctly. Because now watch the distinction between the word electricity and the word energy. Energy is fungible. The most important energy is electricity. And we are shooting ourselves in the foot on the most important kind of energy, that is electricity. There's an entire incumbent Indian public sector energy establishment where there is central planning, there is industrial policy. Most of the researchers just want to be participants and advisors in this incumbent system. And the incumbent system is broken. That we are just in a Soviet Union when it comes to the operations of this system.
शानदार। अजय, मैं सोच रहा था कि क्योंकि इलेक्ट्रिसिटी का रेगुलेशन राज्यों के स्तर पे होता है, तो हर राज्य का अलग सिस्टम होता है। एक्चुअली इस रिफॉर्म के लिए कुछ एक राज्य को थोड़ा इनिशिएटिव लेना है और कोशिश करनी है। ऐसा नहीं है कि पूरे भारत पे सॉल्व करना है। और कुछ राज्यों में इसमें थोड़ी एक इंटेंशन भी है। एटलीस्ट मुंबई में जैसे आपने बताया, एक प्राइवेट प्लेयर को एटलीस्ट डिस्कॉम में अलाउ तो किया गया, जैसे कर्नाटका में तो अभी तक वो भी अलाउड नहीं है। तो इस तरीके की चीजें शायद कुछ राज्य इसमें एक्साइटेड है क्या? आपको ऐसा लग रहा है क्या कि कुछ इनिशिएटिव ले रहे हैं वो लोग?
Absolutely yes. The answer is yes. All over India, there are experiments going on. I think by now everybody understands that private distribution is superior. Okay, so Susan Thomas and I wrote an article on the Leap blog where we did an interesting calculation. So what we did was like this. Step one, we find every household observed in the CMIE household survey in Madras and in Bangalore. And we find out how much electricity bills are they paying. Okay. Then for each of these households, we find a similar household in Bombay, in Ahmedabad, and in Delhi, where electricity distribution is private. So you're able to compare like to like. Okay. So a similar household with similar income in Bangalore, Madras, where the distribution is government, versus a similar household in Bombay, Ahmedabad, Delhi, where distribution is private. And we see that the households in private distribution companies are paying much more for their electricity. Okay. And this is pointing us to something very important, that why is it politically optimal for Siddaramaiah or Stalin to pay subsidies to affluent urban consumers in Bangalore, in Madras, in Coimbatore, in Mysore? What is the political genius of Fadnavis and Mamta Banerjee that they are able to charge good money to urban consumers of 500, 600, 800 rupees a month for their electricity, while the political system in Bangalore or Chennai is not able or willing to do it? I feel these are very important questions that we should pursue. And you are absolutely right that electricity is fundamentally a state subject, and the future of the Indian electricity system will play out one state at a time. So Akshay Jaitley, Renuka Sani, myself, we have worked deeply on Tamil Nadu because we just thought this is an important state. It's an experiment. It's an example that can you study one state at a time, understand it deeply, and there will be solutions that are unique to each state. So for example, in Tamil Nadu, you have this offshore wind angle. In Maharashtra, you have this angle of the Sahyadris where you can do pumped hydel storage. So each state is different and there is no one answer, and each state has to figure out what it has to do. In this, one great choke point is the Electricity Act. So using the concurrent list, the union has got this Electricity Act, which is just full socialism. And it is an important choke point for progress. So in the future, what is needed is a ground up replacement of the Electricity Act, which partly gives power to states and which partly moves from a Soviet Union model of the electricity system to a market based model of the electricity system.
पर इलेक्ट्रिसिटी एक्ट को तो ऐसा पिछली बार जब आया था वो तो एकदम रिफॉर्म और क्या कहते हैं प्रोग्रेस का एग्जाम्पल था। तो ये क्या क्या हो गया मार्केटिंग उसकी मार्केटिंग तो एकदम इस तरीके की थी कि इससे अभी इलेक्ट्रिसिटी लिबरलाइज हो गई है। तो
The
ये
vision
आपने
of
ऐसे
reform
बुद्धि
was that the basic electricity system will be controlled by officials, but the official will be able to get a canteen vendor who will generate electricity with a 25-year fixed price. So for the businessman, it's the best deal in the world. Imagine you're going to produce ball bearings, but I give you a 25-year guaranteed customer with a guaranteed rate of return on equity. It's like this is a travesty of market economics. And frankly, the officials did not let go of their overwhelming control of the electricity system. So this is an intellectual capital problem. As India, we need to learn how to do economics. Okay, this is the importance of Takshashila institution. This is the importance of new thinking in economics. That what we need is a new paradigm where we understand freedom, where we understand democracy, where we understand capitalism. And India is a poor country because our thinkers were weak and our thinkers are weak. We need to improve the intellectual quality of the best people in India. A country cannot be better than its thinkers.
अजय, आपने जो पेपर की बात की, जो डिफरेंस था कीमतों में, मुंबई वर्सेस बैंगलोर, उसमें रिलायबिलिटी का भी मेजर था क्या? क्योंकि एक तरीके से हम लोग ये भी है क्योंकि मुंबई वगैरह में रिलायबिलिटी बहुत ज़्यादा है इलेक्ट्रिसिटी की, प्राइवेट है, कीमतें ज़्यादा है, लेकिन रिलायबिलिटी, जैसे उदाहरण के लिए मेरे पेरेंट्स पुणे में रहते हैं, ठीक है मुंबई नहीं है पर पुणे में भी बेटर सिस्टम है, तो उनके पूरे अपार्टमेंट के लिए बैकअप नहीं है, ज़रूरत ही नहीं है क्योंकि पूरे साल इलेक्ट्रिसिटी रहती है सिर्फ कॉमन एरियाज में। हमारे घर पे संभव ही नहीं है विदाउट बैकअप रहना, सबके घर में फुल बैकअप रहता है और शायद ये प्रॉब्लम कई जगह पे है, तो शायद रिलायबिलिटी बेहतर होगी और उसी तरीके से हम लोग एक नैरेटिव जो जरूरी है वो ये है कि इट इज पॉलिटिकली सेलेबल बिकॉज इट इज मोर रिलायबल।
वो भी बड़ी चीज है। हमने जो रिसर्च किया उसमें रिलायबिलिटी के बारे में डेटा नहीं था। So I agree with you, there are two separate issues that we need to say to the Bangalore intelligentsia that by privatizing Bangalore electricity, you will get more reliable electricity and we will take this burden out of the exchequer. That why is there poor cost recovery in Bangalore? I mean, there is no way it makes sense for Siddaramaiah to do this. Okay. Similarly for Tamil Nadu, that we should think in an eclectic way about how to privatize distribution. It doesn't have to be the full state. You can go one piece at a time. Like we've privatized Bombay. Now let's add Thana to Reliance BSES. Why do we want Thana to be in the clutches of the MSEB? Okay. And so on. Like we should think in all kinds of eclectic ways about how to get it done. It does not matter if the cat is black or white as long as it catches the mice.
फाइनली हम लोग माओ पर आ ही गए।
तो
क्या थी?
अजय, हम एक अलग नेक्स्ट पॉइंट पे चलते हैं। अगर हम क्लाइमेट चेंज के एंगल से देखें तो बहुत जरूरी ये है कि हम लेस कार्बन इंटेंसिव फ्यूल्स का इस्तेमाल करें, राइट? तो इसमें आपने और जो दुनिया भर में काफी जगह पे वो ऑलरेडी इम्प्लीमेंट हो भी रहा है, कार्बन टैक्स, राइट? अब भारत में लेकिन कार्बन टैक्स कैसे ला जा सकता है? एक तो ये लोगों की चिंता ये होती है कि ऑलरेडी भारत में तो इतने सारे टैक्स है, आप इसमें एक और जोड़ लोगे तो मतलब और भी ये लोग तो दब जाएंगे, राइट, इसके अंदर। तो इस कार्बन टैक्स को हम कैसे इंट्रोड्यूस कर सकते हैं और क्यों शायद हमारे लिए जरूरी है ये, इस पे थोड़ा आप बताएं तो।
हाँ, और ये एक ही टैक्स है जो अजय शाह बोल रहे हैं, मतलब अजय शाह जनरली नहीं बोलेंगे और टैक्स डालो, तो वो एक टैक्स, तो ये ऐसा क्या है अजय शाह इस टैक्स में जो आप उसकी तरफदारी कर रहे हैं, बताइए हमें।
So the fossil fuel world, coal and oil, has so many problems. Okay, so let me count the ways. Coal-fired thermal plants are putting solid particulate matter into the air. all over India, air quality is a problem. Okay, and this is the biggest damage to public health that you can imagine, particularly in the North Indian region, where the natural conditions, the bowl of North India, is a terrible place to put solid particulate matter into the air. The second problem is the difficulties associated with the import of oil and gas that is coming from the Middle East. We have this vulnerability. You want to reduce the fossil fuel reliance. The third is the emissions of carbon dioxide, which are bad for the world and also bad for India. So you can say, I am reckless, I don't care about the world. I feel that's an unfair position. Okay, we should care about what harm we are imposing on the world, but also from a simple self-interest point of view, 10% of the world's carbon dioxide emissions are made in India. So in a way, 10% of the damage is under our control. And if you think of heat waves, if you think of the rising waters, okay, if you think of my city, Bombay, going under the oceans, then we have a lot at stake. We have a lot of skin in the game. Bombay, Madras, Calcutta are on the coast. Oh, Cochin also. So we have a lot to lose from uncontrolled climate change. The losses are in trillions of dollars, very large losses. And 10% of that problem is made in India. So even if you wanted to be cruel to all foreigners, which I think is not a position that is consistent with humanism, 10% is directly our emissions of carbon hitting us. So we have an incentive to care about this stuff. Finally comes the world of international trade. Okay, the European Union has started putting up a carbon border tax. Okay, so what they're saying is, if you were to produce steel in Europe, you would have to pay a tax for the carbon dioxide that the European steel plant is producing. If you produce steel in India, then there would be an equivalent tax at the border. Otherwise, it's unfair, right? That the steel plant in Europe would be totally priced out if a steel plant in India could emit carbon dioxide without restriction. So they achieve equality at the border by having a carbon border tax. But if a steel plant in India,
IGST types, जैसे GST local देता है
it's
तो
a GST
import के लिए
kind of
IGST
idea.
है ना,
It's a GST
IGST
kind of
देना
idea.
पड़ेगा.
Zero rating of exports and GST on import. Same. The Europeans invented VAT and they are applying that same mindset to the carbon border adjustment mechanism, CBAM. Okay. And then if I have a producer in India and I'm buying renewables, then I do not have carbon dioxide embedded in my renewables. So I get a competitive advantage when I sell into Europe. Okay, so this is another powerful reason that can we reduce carbon emissions? Can we reduce the carbon intensity of the Indian energy system? This will become an exporting issue as the years go by. So the CBAM has begun in Europe. Over the years, it will become comprehensive. Okay, one day you could be a call center operator in Bangalore, and there will be auditors who will count the amount of carbon dioxide in the electricity that you have purchased, and that tax will be paid at the border when you have a customer in Europe. That day is coming. Okay. Now it's efficient for us to prepare for that world by going all renewables now. The UK has announced a date for the onset of the CBAM, and one by one, I believe all the rich countries of the world will do it. It just makes too much sense. It also, like VAT, once there are two countries that are trading, like imagine that there is trade between Japan and South Korea. If one country has a VAT, it creates very strong incentive for the other to create VAT because it smooths the international trade. So one by one, the major countries of the world will go to carbon taxation and carbon border adjustment. There is only one crazy country left in this world, and that is the United States. Okay, so the right-wing madness of the United States is hostile to climate action. There's just so many intellectual failures of the American right wing. This is just one more of them. So the right-wing blogs, the right-wing Twitter influencers, the tech bros, all these crazies are hostile to climate action. Other than that, we're in good shape. So veering into international relations, there are three strange actors in the world. That is Russia, China, America. Okay, everybody else is capable of getting along, and people will get along in a way that will move to renewables, that will do carbon border taxation. There will be simplicity, there will be clarity, and India should be part of that. So for all these reasons, we need to get to this world of full renewables. Now, on one hand is Wright's law, that the cost of solar panels or batteries of wind turbines is coming down, and that is correct. But the fact remains that, maybe you have an old thermal plant, maybe the depreciated value of the thermal plant is now zero, but still now you're causing damage. You are creating solid particulate matter by emitting carbon. Okay, and our job is to get to the point where we start closing down these things. We have to start getting the pathway to close down coal thermal plants, to close down coal mines. Okay, so for that, a certain dose of carbon taxation will help. So the great economist Pigou has this word called Pigouvian taxation, that there is a negative externality directly associated with the emission of carbon dioxide into the air, of solid particulate matter into the air. And so you put a tax on that, and so you give people the incentive to reduce their emissions. Now, taxation in India is a very bad thing, and there is way too much taxes that are being collected. And of all people, I do not want to propose more money for the government of India. So at this moment in history, there is a remarkable opportunity that you merge a carbon tax with the transition to a low single rate GST. Okay, so my dream for GST is 8%. Okay, or 9%. So think of that package, that you get a single rate GST of 9% on everything, and you get a carbon tax of $100 a ton. And that package would be roughly revenue neutral. Detailed calculations need to be made. Much research needs to be done. But this would be my imagination. And we need to get started. And even relatively modest levels of carbon taxation are very powerful because they reshape the private sector. They reshape incentives. We want to show the private sector where this game is going. And if the Indian policy establishment is able to see that our interests lie with controlling fossil fuels. Okay, so we've shown you so many reasons. There is the carbon dioxide problem. There is the vulnerability to the Persian Gulf problem. There is the CBAM issue. There is the solid particulate matter issue. All these things. It would help if there is a carbon tax, and we can debate how large that should be, over what kind of time horizons it should be phased in. But the moment the policy establishment starts moving in this direction, it will work wonders for private incentives. Then the private sector will double down and get into the game of exiting from the fossil fuel world and moving to the renewables world. Because Wright's law is already working. So, think of both. There's a carrot and stick. The carrot is we've made revolutionary gains in terms of the improvements on solar, wind, lithium ion. And I will say parenthetically, these achievements were made all over the world. They were done by researchers all over the world. There was no Indian money that went into improving either the fundamental science or the engineering or the manufacturing of these things all over the world. We are free riding on that. Okay, so when people say we should be cruel, we should not care about the world, the other countries put carbon in the air, it's not my problem, I just want to encourage that, look, there are positive and negative externalities in the world that cut across countries. Okay, CPUs and Unix was invented by the world. We benefited. So, let's not be so proud that when the world does something, we will take the good things and we will never take the bad things. That's a narrow position to be in. So this is my thinking on carbon tax. What do you think? Does it make sense?
So अजय, सेंस तो बहुत है इसमें, लेकिन आप बताइए, जैसे सरकार का होता है, सरकार के काफी कंट्रोल में है ये, वो शायद कर भी दे, राइट, क्योंकि ये तो सेंट्रल गवर्नमेंट कर सकती है. अभी उन्होंने इलेक्ट्रिसिटी को रिफॉर्म नहीं किया और ये लगा दिया. अभी ऐसी सिचुएशन सोचिए, तो जो क्या कहते हैं, आई मीन प्राइवेट सेक्टर क्या करेगा, क्योंकि आपके पास इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर है नहीं ये मूव करने के लिए, और टैक्स आ जाएगा लेकिन आपके ऊपर में. तो मतलब 4-5 साल के लिए, 10 साल के लिए, जैसे जीएसटी में भी हुआ काफी, राइट, आई मीन देयर वर लॉट ऑफ इश्यूज, उतना बुरा नहीं, पर ये तो क्योंकि यहाँ पे एक फिजिकल इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर है जिसके ऊपर हम काफी पिगी बैक करना चाहते हैं, तो ये सीक्वेंसिंग आपको नहीं लगता बहुत जरूरी है? अगर हम इलेक्ट्रिसिटी सेक्टर अपना नहीं सुधारेंगे तो ये गड़बड़ हो जाएगी.
All these things have to move, and they have to move in a correlated way. So I would dream that you would do all these things nicely and sensibly. Realistically, I don't think that the Indian state is capable of that. Okay, public policy in India works very badly. We are a third world country. Okay, there's a reason why our per capita GDP is 1/10 of the global frontier. So okay, we'll mess it up. Okay, but a messed up GST is better than excise. So like that,
ये तो ठीक बात है.
we'll mess it up and we'll make progress. And again, I would not advocate going to $100 a ton overnight. Can you start at $10 a ton? Okay, so it's a modest move. but it starts showing a direction. And imagine, okay, in our ideal world, we would push three things together. A new Electricity Act, okay, we would get Akshay Jaitley and Renuka Sane to lead the drafting project of a new Electricity Act. So we get to a full market-based electricity sector, and we get out of this entire central planning nonsense that is there today. We get to true prices, true markets. As an aside, I will encourage everybody here to look at the Texas ERCOT system, ERCOT. It's a fully market-based transmission and distribution system. It's just absolutely brilliant. We had a seminar on this subject at XKDR Forum recently. That video is on our channel. It's just, you cannot believe how perfect it is. It's a dream system. Okay. Second, we would do a small carbon tax and say, look, over the years, this is going to get bigger and bigger. And from the ramparts of the Red Fort, a Prime Minister of India would say that I have a dream, and my dream is that all the coal mines of India will be closed down and we will plant forests there. Okay. And it'll take some years to get there, but let's start going there. And third, can we go to a 9% single rate GST, saying revenue neutrality, that I'm not burdening more and more taxes upon the people of India, will be revenue neutral for the money in the hands of the government. So it is nobody's case that we should give more money to the Indian state. Okay, that's a development economics illusion that we need to find more and more money for the government. It's a bad idea. The government of India has too much money. We should get less money to the government of India. So think about this as a revenue neutral thing, that the introduction of a carbon tax should go with transformation of the GST, which is long pending, is long awaited. Okay, so Vijay Kelkar, Arvind Modi, and I meet together and we cry every few months about the sadness of the Indian GST. We began on that journey in 2003. Okay? Here we are in 2026. It has taken 23 years to get here. So Pranay, as the youngest person in the room, please promise me for the next 23 years, you will be preaching carbon tax.
यस यस तो उसी पे आता है, क्योंकि कार्बन टैक्स पे हम लोग बात कर रहे थे एक पॉलिटिकल इकोनॉमी के दृष्टिकोण से। अब जैसे कार्बन टैक्स इसीलिए भी ईयू डालना चाहता है क्योंकि चाइना में कार्बन टैक्स नहीं है, और चाइना में बहुत सारी चीजें हैं जिसकी वजह से उनके जो गुड्स हैं वो बहुत ही कम प्राइस्ड होते हैं कंपेयर टू जो भी यूरोप में होता है। तो मुझे लग रहा था वो भी एक अपॉर्चुनिटी है ना, क्योंकि अगर हम लोग कार्बन टैक्स डालेंगे तो फिर जो चीन से चीजें आ रही है उसको हम लोग भी एक सीबैम लगा सकते हैं उसके ऊपर, और फिर तो उस तरीके से मतलब एक और रीजन है जो हमको उस तरफ पुश करता है।
That's correct. That when we do the carbon tax, we should do the CBAM at the same time. So first of all, we get that passporting between EU, UK, India. Okay, so their exports to India become correctly priced for their carbon inputs, and that way this would influence Chinese exports into India. And China is a deeply carbon intensive energy system. That is fully correct.
मुझे लगता था चाइना में सोलर बहुत ज्यादा है, क्या ऐसा नहीं है क्या प्रणय? मुझे लगता था चाइना बहुत सोलर कर रहा है, हवा तो यही है, पीआर तो एटलीस्ट यही बोलता है उनका।
हाँ सोलर है, पर उसमें कार्बन टैक्स तो नहीं है, उस तरीके का मैकेनिज्म नहीं है, और अभी भी चाइना का बहुत सारा इकोसिस्टम कोल वेल पर डिपेंडेंट है,
कोल पर ही है,
सोलर बन रहा है। हाँ,
और उसमें भी 6% कोल।
अच्छा,
so carbon tax at the border is very material for Chinese exports to EU. And again, if we start going down that route, then this would be a part of our story. Also, just pause for a moment, okay? If India announces, if the Indian Union government announces $10 a ton as a carbon tax and says that this is our strategy, this is where we are going in the long run, okay? That it is my dream that the coal mines of India will be closed down and we will replace them with forests. Okay, that's really where we are going. Just think of the impact it would have on investors. Think of how every investor, every equity and debt investor will move in favor of renewables. A whole renewable ecosystem of India will be transformed. Immediately, investments will go up, and rapidly you will get a quickening of the Indian clean energy transition. And look, I am not standing in 2016 where the renewables revolution was not ready. Today in 2026, the renewables revolution is ready. Today, the wind, the batteries, the solar is ready. They are amazing costs. Now there are only human institutions that have to get solved. Yeah, they do have
Sure.
to get solved. But the technological opportunity is just beautiful. Everybody should be thinking, how do I handle this? That I have one fridge, I can put 2 panels on my roof, I can go off grid, and I'll put one small lithium ion battery, and I can take my one fridge fully off grid, and I'm out of the payment for electricity for my one fridge for the rest of my life. The answer is yes. These things can be done. They should be done. There is a massive technological opportunity at the prices at which you see things today. The critical factor you've got to think about is the cost of capital. And I'm happy to talk about that a little now, or we can do this separately. So all the clean
Yes.
energy calculations are always a lumpy expenditure upfront. Okay, abhi, I have to buy a battery. Abhi, I have to buy an EV. Abhi, I have to buy a solar panel. All the cost is upfront. And then I get benefits for many, many years. So this is greatly shaped by the cost of capital. If the interest rate is low, then I will do more of these kind of investments right now. So opening up the border of India to open foreign capital coming into India is the way to get a crash in the cost of capital in India. This is good for all investment in India.
Huh.
This is good for venture capital investing in deep tech firms. This is good for building infrastructure. This is good for building steel factories. This is good for everything. This is something that should always have been done. And I want to say I told you so. From the early 90s, I've been saying this. But the fact remains that this is a critical sector. And let me give you a flavor of how big the electricity sector is. We have a rough estimate, again, CMIE projects under implementation data. For every 100 rupees of projects under implementation of all other sectors put together, you need 46 rupees of electricity projects.
Oh, wow.
Okay.
That is how big electricity is. That this one damn sector is a capital sink. It needs crazy amounts of money. That you need 100 for everything else. You need 46 for electricity. So then I just start thinking cost of capital. Like you
Massive
really
number.
have to solve the macroeconomic mistakes of India. That, there are 3 pieces. You want a floating exchange rate, an open capital account, and inflation targeting. We've done one. We got to the inflation targeting. We are not yet there at the other 2. Reserve Bank of India is busy trying to prevent rupee depreciation, and we have plenty of capital controls at the border. So we have to modernize Indian macroeconomics so that plentiful capital comes into the country, so that we get a low cost electricity sector. What sense does it make to make this expensive? Like we need an upgrade of our macroeconomics and finance operating system so that the real sector can then go put in all that capital that is required to make a rich country. Or may I say this differently, that because in Bharat ke liye, you need a lot of capital. How's that? Do I sound better?
हाँ. अजय, मुझे आपको एक फॉलोअप सवाल पूछना था. कार्बन क्रेडिट इंडिया में कैसा चल रहा है कि इज देयर एन अपटेक और इज इट अ डेड पॉलिसी?
In the world of carbon control, there are 3 methods that can be adopted. Okay, one way is the carbon tax. All the economists want carbon tax. Why? Because you tax the carbon and then the private sector decides what is appropriate technology. Okay, so which industries, which technologies should use carbon, should not use carbon, is controlled by the private sector and not the government sector. There should be no industrial policy. Okay, so maybe for running ships in the sea, you should use carbon. Maybe for flying planes, you should use carbon. Who's to say? Okay, this should be a business decision controlled by the private sector. And every day, the technical and engineering choices will change based on improvements of technology. So all the economists want carbon tax as the way to do carbon control. But there are 2 other methods. One method is regulation, one method is subsidy. In regulation, a government can say that the minimum fuel efficiency of a car must be so much. In a subsidy, the government can say, I will subsidize a solar plant by so much. Okay. In those 2 pathways, the government builds a concept of carbon credits and tradable carbon credits. And so that is a pathway through which you can go also. In Europe, in fact, right now, they are heavily relying on green industrial policy. They are using regulation, they are using subsidies, and then they have an emission trading system. And we can discuss that in much more detail separately. But think of these as 3 alternative pathways to do climate action by the government. I think the economics is crystal clear that the private sector will always do it better. If the government chooses a minimum required fuel efficiency of a car, how is the government to know the correct number? How does the government know what is the technology of cars? How is the government to know what is the technology of aluminum? How is the government to know what is the technology of steel? How do you equate the marginal cost of carbon abatement across different industries? There is no way for an official to know this. So the regulatory and subsidy pathways will always impose a higher cost upon the country. The carbon tax pathway will get you the clean energy transition at the lowest cost to the country.
नहीं वो बिल्कुल, अदरवाइज हम पहले से डिसाइड कर लेंगे कि इलेक्ट्रिक ही होना चाहिए, हाइब्रिड नहीं होना चाहिए। मे बी 10 साल के लिए हाइब्रिड होना चाहिए, फिर फुल इलेक्ट्रिक होना चाहिए, हु नोज,
And how
मे
is
बी
a
टू व्हीलर में
bureaucrat to
होना
know?
चाहिए। हाँ बिल्कुल बिल्कुल, किसी को भी नहीं पता। अभी जैसे ग्रीन हाइड्रोजन पे हो गया है फोकस, ठीक है, मतलब मे बी इट इज द राइट वे, मे बी इट इज नॉट द राइट वे, क्या मालूम। ठीक, नो नो, ये तो एकदम आज जबरदस्त मेरे ख्याल से मल्टी डिसिप्लिनरी एनर्जी क्लास हो गई आज की। मेरे को मजा आ गया इस चीज का, तो दैट वाज वेरी नाइस, क्योंकि एनर्जी इज मल्टी डिसिप्लिनरी और मल्टी डिसिप्लिनरी इन मल्टीपल वेज। तो ये तो एक हमारे यहाँ पे बहुत
और
खामी है ही कि हम
आज
साइलोड करते हैं।
इसमें तो फॉरेन पॉलिसी भी आ गई, भूटान, श्रीलंका।
करेक्ट, बिल्कुल बिल्कुल। तो एनर्जी पॉलिसी बहुत सोफिस्टिकेटेड भी है और बहुत कॉम्प्लेक्स भी है। और जितने लोग इसको, आई थिंक इस एपिसोड में हम अप्रिशिएट कर सकते हैं कि कितने तार जुड़ते हैं ये बिजली का तार से जो आता है उसको उसको हमें संभालने के लिए। तो ये बहुत बढ़िया रहा। आई थिंक हमारे श्रोता भी हमको बताएं उनको कैसा लगा। आप भी अपने तार इस तार में जोड़िए। धन्यवाद,
शुक्रिया।